biblical wisdom. And the whole premise of this series is that the Pareto principle applies to biblical principles. Now, before I go on, let me ask, is everyone familiar with the Pareto principle? You should be. In fact, you ought to know this principle because it applies to so much more than just what I'm teaching on. It applies to so many different things. This Pareto principle is also known as the 20-80 rule. Now, if you're not familiar with it, let me give you kind of a brief explanation of it. The Pareto principle is named after Vilfredo Pareto, who discovered that 20% of the population owned 80% of the land in Italy. And that fascinated him, and it interested him because this ratio of 20-80 seemed to be a natural phenomenon that applied across a wide spectrum. As an example, it applies to task. 20% of the task on your to-do list will produce 80% of your most meaningful and beneficial results. By meaningful, I mean useful, serious, or important. By beneficial, I mean most helpful. You see, you're going to have a lot of tasks on your to-do list that produce results, but not results that are meaningful and beneficial. Things like go through emails, check Messenger, clean off desktop, tidy up office, sort mail, look at Facebook to see whose birthday it is, and write happy birthday. Those things might give you a rush of endorphins when you check them off your list, but let me just be honest with you. They're not important. They're not meaningful. They're not beneficial compared to the other things you need to do. Those type of tasks are just excuses to procrastinate from doing the things that you really need to do, the things that matter the most. Because on that list, we all do it. We put down little things that we need to do that really aren't beneficial. They really aren't that important. The truth of the matter is 20% of the task on your to-do list will produce the most meaningful and the most beneficial results. Yeah. The Pareto principle applies to time. 20% of your time will produce 80% of your overall productivity. It applies to businesses. 20% of a store's products will bring in 80% of their profit. It applies to reading. 20% of a book contains 80% of the most important content. It applies to donations. 20% of the donors will give 80% of the money. And I could go on and on and on. But that, people, is the Pareto principle, also known as the 20-80 rule. And it is a natural phenomenon that applies across a wide spectrum. Now, listen to this because this is very, very important. And this is the whole premise to this series. The Pareto principle even applies to biblical principles. That's right. 20% of the biblical principles, or I should say of the principles found in the Bible, will produce a much greater impact on a person's life than all of the other principles combined. How much of a greater impact? About 80%. Again, it's the Pareto principle, the 20-80 rule. Now, let me say it in a different way to make sure that you get it, because the Pareto principle is so important. 20% of the biblical principles will produce 80% of the most beneficial results in a person's life. Remember what beneficial means. Beneficial means most helpful. In other words, the results that are going to help you the most. So what I'm saying is this: 20% of all the principles will produce the results that help you the most. Yeah. Now, some of you are visual learners. So let me use a diagram to illustrate what I'm telling you. When it comes to marriage, 20% of the marriage principles found in the Bible will produce 80% of the desired results if properly applied. Look at the diagram on the back wall. This is diagram 1. Do you see that? Well, I want you to notice on this left side, we've kind of faded it out, made it where you can't see them, and here's why. If I put them down, people would be writing them down. I'm just using this as an example. But I want you to understand, if you took all the marriage principles in the Bible and listed them on the left side, and you want to know which ones will help me the most, which ones will help my marriage the most, I want you to understand 20% of all of the principles will help you the most. They'll take you, if you look at this, 80% of the way to a great marriage. Now, if you notice, there's 3 vertical lines that are white. That first one represents when you get married. What you desire when you get married is a great marriage, and it's the last vertical line, the white line. You see the one in between that's not even 2/3, it's more than that, 80% of the way? That represents a good marriage. Because what I'm telling you here is 20% of all of the marriage principles in the Bible, they will give you, or they will produce 80% of the desired results. They'll give you a good marriage if you do them. Does that make sense? Yeah. 20% will produce greater results in your marriage than all of the others combined. Do you want to be best friends with your spouse? Do you want to have a good sex life? Do you want to be able to resolve conflict without fighting and going to bed mad? Do you want to feel loved by your spouse? Do you want to feel secure in your marriage? Are those the things you want? Are those the results you desire in your marriage? Well, these are the things these principles provide. They produce the results that create a good marriage, a healthy marriage. And they only make up 20% of all the marriage principles found in the Bible, yet they produce greater results than all of the other principles combined. And that's what you need to know. Yeah. On the other hand, because if you can state something in a positive way, you can also state it in a negative way. And this is what you need to see. So let's state it in a negative way. On the other hand, 80% of the marriage principles found in the Bible will only produce 20% of the desired results if properly applied. Look at the second diagram on the back of the wall. You still have all the same marriage principles, but I want you to understand, if you don't do the top 20%, the ones that matter the most, and you do all the other marriage principles, I want you to see it won't even get you to a good marriage. In fact, that one that's the white vertical line that's in the middle, that is bad marriage. Yeah. You can do all of the other marriage principles and still have a bad marriage. It won't get you a good marriage. Why? Because not all principles are the same. Some principles are more important than others, and that's what you need to understand. Yeah. All of the other principles combined don't really produce that much. They will help you, but not to the same degree as the 20%. Everyone sees that, right? 20% of the principles will produce much greater results in your marriage than all the others combined. Now, what does that tell you if you're a smart person? What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you need to focus on the 20% that produce the greatest results. I've made this comment, and people think it's bragging, and it's not. It's that I'm not stupid. I say this: if you hired me to be your employee, I'd be your best employee, because I would find out what you really want from me, what you really need from me, what the desired results are. And I would write down everything I needed to do to be able to give you the desired results. And I would know that 20% on that list will take me 80% of the way. They'll produce 80% of the desired results. And those would be the 20% I focused on. I wouldn't neglect the other 80%, but I can promise you I would do the 20%. Some of you worked hard all your life for your boss, and you don't understand why they don't value you as an employee, because you're not doing the right things. That's good teaching, Pastor Allen. Yeah. If you won't say it, I will. That's good teaching. All right. So what I'm doing in this series is I'm giving you the most important marriage principles that will produce the greatest results. The 20%, if you will. Because these are the principles you need to focus on. We don't want to forget the others. I've taught a lot of great things on marriage, and we don't want to forget those things. But we want to focus on the 20% that give us the greatest results. Because I'm tired of people in my congregation getting divorces. There's no reason for it. unless you just met them down in the Bahamas and got married before you came home. Oh yeah, I've heard it all. Anyways, I just want you to understand, we're going to focus on the 20%. I'm going to give you the 20%. Now, I've already given you the top 2 marriage principles. The first one is the purpose of marriage principle. And here's what it states. The more Christ-like you are, the better marriage you have. You want to know why I have a great marriage? Because my wife is very Christ-like. She's forgiving, she's loving, she's patient. She endures much. You look at 1 Corinthians 13, she's everything love says. Me, on the other hand, I struggle to be like Christ. I want to be. I read my word every day, I pray, but I actually have to work at it because sometimes my personality just works the other way. We're sitting in the sunroom yesterday, we're drinking our coffee, and we're looking out at the 18th hole, and we're kind of watching everything that's going on, and someone pulls up to the house that has been sold. And they've been working on this house. I knew that when they sold it, the people who were moving in were working on the house, but I wondered what they were doing in there. So the people drove up to it, and I told Lisa, I said, I need to walk over there and ask them what they're doing and go in and take a look. And she said, don't do that. You'll make them nervous. I said, yeah, but that's fun. I said, I'll just walk over there and I'll say, I own the house on the corner right there, and I'm on the neighborhood watch. I've been noticing that you've been coming to this house and going inside, and I know that this house is vacant. Just who are you and what are you doing? And my wife said, don't you dare. And I thought, but it would be funny. That's my personality. You know, about a month and a half ago, they were putting in all of the tubing that they're going to run the fiber optic for Cox. And so they're out there digging on my property, and I thought that's what they were doing, but I didn't really know. And to Lisa said, I'm going to go out and find out what they're doing. Don't do that. Don't do that. She said, you just make them nervous because they're digging on our property. I said, yeah, I want to find out what it is. And so sure enough, I walk out there, and I can just tell them, look in their face, they're thinking, oh no, a property owner. They're going to be upset I'm digging on their property. I said, so boys, I'm 63, I can say that. So boys, what are you doing? We're going to be putting in fiber optics so you can have fast internet. Oh, that's really good. I thought you guys were done. Would you like something to drink? And he's like, oh, it just instantly changes. He's not upset. Of course, I bring him out 2 Cokes. But you see, that's just my personality, and I have to fight that. But my point being, you're thinking, how in the world did you get on this? I'm not very Christ-like. I have to really walk in the Spirit, think about what Jesus would want, because my type of personality wants to tease. My type of personality thinks certain things are funny that aren't really funny. You know, I went to the cardiologist the other day, and he said, you got to lose weight. And he said, just looking at you, let me just say, what would you think about going on a plant-based diet? I looked at my wife and said, Doc says I'm going to die. He said, oh, you can eat some red meat. I said, Doc says I'm still going to die. You know, that's just my personality. Now, here's the interesting, I've really had to work on that, because if I want a better marriage, I got to be like Christ. I've got to be like my wife, Lisa, because she's easy to live with. Listen, if you can't live with Jesus, you can't live with anyone, right? That's why this is such an important principle. Number 1 is the purpose of marriage principle. The purpose of marriage is to make you more Christ-like. And the reason it's such an important principle is the more Christ-like you become, the better marriage you have. Believe it or not, I've come a long ways. You should have heard me preach when I first started. Anyways, the second most important principle is the praxis principle. The praxis principle states the way you treat your spouse, or the way it affects the way you feel about them. Yeah. If you treat your spouse like they're the most beautiful thing in the world, the most important thing in your life, you'll begin to feel like they're the most beautiful person in the world, the most important thing in your life. If you treat your spouse like garbage, you'll begin to feel they're garbage. Before long, you'll be thinking what it's like to be married to someone else, a better and improved model. The problem's not your spouse. The problem is you. You're not applied the praxis principle. Those two principles alone would change most of your marriages. Yeah. So now we're ready to move on to the third most important principle. What is the third most important principle? It is the love language principle. I'm calling this principle the love language principle because most of you are familiar with Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages. Now, I first heard about this principle when I was going to JBU. That was about 40 years ago. And it wasn't called the 5 love languages. It was called the 5 ways to express love. Well, a couple of years after I graduated from JBU, I was in a Christian bookstore. I was looking at some books, and there was the 5 love languages. And I thought, what in the world is that? Well, I picked up Gary Chapman's book, and I thought, wow, this is exactly what I learned at JBU. So I don't know whose original material this is. It could be Gary Chapman's, or it might be someone else's. I don't know. I just want you to know it's not my material. This is something I learned at John Brown University. But all I know is that Gary Chapman wrote this book based on the material that I learned at John Brown University. Now, let me say this. The book is good, and I recommend the book. However, the book is not complete. And the reason the book is not complete is because it doesn't explain why individuals communicate love in different ways. So I'm going to teach on this, and I'm going to explain why we do that. And I'm also going to recommend that you buy the book. It's kind of a supplement to what I'm teaching. Now, the reason Gary Chapman titled his book The 5 Love Languages is because language is the means by which we communicate with others. So when Gary talks about the 5 love languages, what he's really saying is that there are 5 ways to communicate love. In essence, what he's saying is that there are 5 ways to express love. And no one expresses love in all 5 ways unless they're in a state of limerence. Everyone knows what limerence is, right? If you don't, let me explain what limerence is. Limerence is when you're head over heels in love. It's when you're so in love, you're basically worthless. But as I said, no one expresses love in all 5 ways unless they're in this limerence state. And then it's only temporary because the state of limerence only lasts for about 2 to 3 years. And then the person goes back or reverts back to the way they were, which means they have a predominant way of expressing love and a secondary way of expressing love. In other words, most people only express love in 2 of the 5 ways. You'll have a predominant way in which you express love, and you'll have a secondary way. And the secondary way only kicks in on special occasions. As an example, my wife is acts of service. She's always doing acts of service to show that she loves you. But when birthdays come around or Christmas comes around, she gives gifts. Why? Because that's her secondary love language, the giving of gifts. So when special moments come, that secondary language kicks in. It's kind of like, and let's use languages as an example. Your predominant language is English. How many of you know Spanish? Wow. No one here knows Spanish? Okay. We're Americans. We don't have to learn any other language. I'm going to be canceled. But anyways, usually you have a predominant, that's the language you learned in home, and then you have a secondary language, and you only speak it when special occasions. Someone's there that doesn't know English, or you're traveling, or you're doing those type of things. Well, when it comes to expressing love, it's the same way. You have a predominant way that you always express love. And then there'll be special moments when that secondary love language will kick in. So knowing that, let's talk about this principle, the love language principle, also known as the 5 ways to express love. So let's start with the basics. There are 5 basic ways to express love to another person. Words of affirmation, quality time, giving of gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Those are the 5 ways that people express love. Words of affirmation is using words to express love, appreciation, and affection. My predominant love language is words of affirmation. Looking for my wife in anywheres. Right there. I love you, honey. You're the most important thing in my life. I'm telling you, you have made my life. That's the thing that ever happened to me. That's how I express love. Words of affirmation. Side note, it's not written words of affirmation. My wife is sorely disappointed when I buy a card for her. Because it's like, your words of affirmation, I just thought your cards would be, no, it's words of affirmation, not writing of affirmation. But anyways, words of affirmation is the using of words to express love. Quality time is the giving of your undivided attention for a period of time. This may involve going out to eat, taking a walk, or getting away for a weekend with just the two of you. But it must involve the giving of your undivided attention. What's kind of interesting is my secondary love language is kind of changed over the years, and it can do that. Used to be physical touch. That's why I'm kind of a hugger. Not kind of, I am a hugger, but I want you to understand it's become more physical, it's become more quality time. But one of the reasons why is because Lisa and I only spend 24 hours a day together, 7 days a week. That's not enough. I'm just teasing. We work together, so we're with each other 24/7, but it's not undivided attention. My most cherished time is on Saturday mornings. And I always want her to spend about an hour and a half with me, sitting in the sunroom, drinking a cup of coffee so that we can have each other's undivided attention. So sometimes sitting down and watching a movie is not quality time because your attention's on the movie. Now, before the movie, after the movie, those type of things, that can be quality time. Everyone with me? Everyone understand? If you're online, are you following me? Good. The giving of gifts. Giving of gifts is giving a gift that you put a lot of thought into, and it means something. It says, I'm thinking of you. I saw this and it just made me think of you because I know you like this. My son-in-law makes me look really bad. I'm assuming Aaron's got giving of gifts as one of his either primary or secondary love languages. And that's my wife's secondary love language, and I didn't get that. How'd you like that leaf blower, honey? It made me think of you. Acts of service. Acts of service is doing things for your spouse, especially little things that you know are very meaningful to them. Physical touch is kissing, embracing, a pat on the back, holding hands, a hug, sitting next to you in the pickup truck because they're not bucket seats. Now, listen to me, men, it's not sex. It does not include sexual intercourse. And why do I say that? Because when I list the 5 ways to express love, every man goes, physical touch is mine. Because when you're touched, you want it to go to one thing. No. If that's the way you are, it's not physical touch for you. No. What's it called? It's called testosterone. All right? Yeah. So, if you like holding hands, if you like them sitting right next to you, if you want to put your arm around them and you're always doing that, you're going to give kisses, all of those type of things, then your physical touch, that's the way you express love. Now, here's what's interesting. That used to be my secondary love language, and I think it still is, but quality time is really kind of even with it now. But here's what's interesting. That's why I'm a hugger and I've got to watch it. Especially now, you get in church and it's kind of a lifestyle. And so you got your friends and I meet my friends and I will hug my friends. Don't think anything about it. And then some man comes to church that's never been to church before and he's not a physical touch person. And he introduces himself, and I reach out, I shake his hand, and then I pull him close, and I give him a hug, and he goes straight as a board. And I realize immediately, big mistake. He's not coming back to this church. Yeah, not everyone has physical touch. You got to realize that. Now, all of these are legitimate ways to express love, to communicate love. But out of these 5, only one is the predominant way in which you express love. And the reason you express love in that particular way is because that's the way you want and need love expressed to you. Let me say that again. The reason that's the predominant way that you express love is because that's the way you want and need love expressed to you. Now, let me explain why that is, because this is scriptural. This is the part that Gary Chapman does not cover. Turn with me, if you would, in your Bible to Matthew chapter 7, verse number 12. It says, therefore. Why is therefore? It's therefore because it's important. Underline the word therefore. We'll come back to it. Whenever you see that word therefore, underline it. It's very important. Therefore, however you want people to treat you, so treat them, for this is the law and the prophets. What does he mean for this law? It means this is what the Bible's telling you. This is the sum of it all. The way you want people to treat you, you treat them. Now, we're all familiar with this because this is the golden rule. And the golden rule simply states to treat other people the way you want to be treated. But let's dig a little bit deeper, and let me show you something interesting. Again, notice the word therefore. I had you underline it. Therefore is translated from the Greek word un, and more importantly, it's an inferential conjunction. In other words, it infers something from the previous verse. Everyone knows what I mean by infer. I can say something where I imply it. When you hear it, you infer from what I implied. All right? So, an inferential conjunction introduces a logical conclusion drawn from the facts that are stated in the previous verse. In other words, because of the facts in verse 11, we just read verse 12. Because of the facts in verse 11, therefore, you need to treat people the way you want to be treated. Now, what are the facts in verse 11? Well, we better go back and read it. That's why we can't just start with verse 12. It says, therefore. It's drawing a logical conclusion from the facts that are stated in verse 11. So look at verse 11. If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask him? Now, how in the world do you draw the conclusion to treat people the way you want to be treated from verse 11? Well, notice the phrase, if you then, being evil, you're not even a good person. If you then, being human, know how to give good gifts to your children. Do you see that? Verse 11 states that you know how to give good gifts to your children. In other words, the Bible's telling us in verse 11, it's instinctive. Yeah. Humans instinctively know to treat those they love the way they want to be treated. Let me say that again. Humans, and you're human, instinctively know to treat those we love the way we want to be treated. You see, you naturally treat those you love the way you want to be treated. You instinctively apply the golden rule to those you love. However, we don't instinctively do this for other people. If I don't love you, I don't treat you the way I want to be treated. So Jesus comes along and he says, hey, it's human nature to treat people you love the way you want to be treated. If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how do you know that? It's instinctive. You know to treat them the way you want to be treated. But you don't do that to people you don't love. So Jesus comes along and he says, I'm going to give you the golden rule. Now, don't just do that for your kids. Don't just do that for your spouse, your parents, your siblings. No, I want you to do that to other people who are not family. I want you to treat people the way you want to be treated. That's the golden rule. Now, notice what I said, because this is very important. If you're taking notes, write this down. I will repeat it. You instinctively treat those you love the way you want to be treated. Let me say it again, because this is the foundation for what I'm teaching. You instinctively treat those you love the way you want to be treated, if you're emotionally healthy. If you're not emotionally healthy, that's another sermon series. So, let me state this fact in a different way. When it comes to your family, you naturally express love the way you want love expressed to you. I'm going to say it again. When it comes to your family, you instinctively, you naturally express love the way you want love expressed to you. The problem is most of you are married to someone who expresses love differently than you do. In other words, you're treating them the way you want to be treated, but they don't want that. Let me give an example. Lisa is acts of service. That's her predominant way of expressing love. I'm words of affirmation. So when we got married, right off the bat, we had problems. And the reason we had problems is because I'm constantly telling her how much I love her, how beautiful she is. Man, what a difference she's made in my life. And do you think she's saying any of those things back to me? Nada. Not a word. She's cooking me my favorite meals, desserts, doing all these little things for me. And inside I'm thinking, man, I've told her 1,000 times I love her and she hadn't told me she loves me once. And inside she's thinking, words are cheap. I'm doing everything I can think of for this man and he doesn't do one thing for me. He just sits and takes. I like to be served. Yeah. We were not communicating love in the same way. We had two different love languages. Now, you probably were this way. Every once in a while, I'll have someone come up to me, and it's usually a man, and here's what he'll say. Pastor, it doesn't matter what I do. My wife will periodically say that I just don't love her. And it drives me crazy. Lord, I'm doing everything I know to do, and she still says, you don't love me. What in the world does she want from me? Well, if you've ever asked that question, let me give you the answer. Here it is. She wants you to express love in her love language. Because if you don't express love in her love language, she's not going to feel loved. So stop expressing love in your love language and start expressing love in her love language. Speak in a language she understands. Let me use an illustration. This is an analogy. Suppose that Lisa spoke Spanish and not English, and I only spoke English and not Spanish. And boy, it's love at first sight. She's gorgeous. She knows I'm a hunk. We get married, and let me tell you, right off the bat, I'm just talking to her and telling her how great she is, whatever, and then she responds, but she's speaking in Spanish. Pretty soon, we've got this communication problem. Now, after a while, we're kind of expressing things with our hands, and we're like, eat, hungry, grumbling. And she, oh, he's hungry. And she goes in the kitchen, starts fixing food or whatever. What's interesting is it's hard to understand when you speak a different language. When Lisa and I got married, we spoke a different language in expressing love. I expressed love by saying things, how pretty she was, how wonderful she was, all the great things she did. She expressed love by doing things. And I kept thinking, well, I'm so glad she's doing these things, but just once I'd like her to tell her just how much she loves me and why she loves me. And she's going, it's so nice to hear these things, but every once in a while, I would just like the man to do something for me. But we spoke different love languages. Now, listen to me because this is important. Out of the 5 basic ways to express love, one of them speaks more deeply to you on an emotional level than all the rest. As a result, you want love expressed to you in that way, and you express love to others in that way. And when love is expressed to you in that way, you understand you're loved. If love is not expressed in that one particular way, you don't feel loved, even if you are loved. But seldom does a person marry another person who wants love expressed in the same way they do. Why is that? Because opposites attract. So going into marriage, you have to know 2 things. If you're taking notes, write this down. Number 1, you have to know how you want love expressed to you. So I put it like this. We have to know how we want love expressed to us. The second thing you need to know is how your partner wants love expressed to them. Because if we want to be a good mate, we don't give them what we need, we give them what they need. We give them what they want, not what we want. So, what does your mate want? I'm going to use it as an example of the woman. She wants you to express love in the way she needs it, not the way you need it. And if she doesn't receive it in that way, she doesn't feel loved even if she is loved. And women, men are the same way. If you don't express love in the way that they need it, they won't feel loved even if they are loved. Now let's go deeper. Okay, that's just shallow. Let's go deeper. How many of you have noticed that when you were dating, your spouse expressed love in all 5 ways? Anyone notice that? It's like, man, they express love in all of these ways. But then once you got married, that dwindled away, and now they only express love in one particular way, one predominant way. What happened? Well, what happened is that when you were dating, your mate was what is known as romantically obsessed with you. This is also known as limerence. You see, the word limerence was coined after probably about 50 years after we were using the term romantically obsessed. In fact, that used to be the term that was always used up until about 1978. And about 1978, all of a sudden, all these studies came in and they changed the term to limerence. But I want you to understand that the same thing. Being romantically obsessed with someone and being in the state of limerence are the same thing. They are synonymous. Now, at its peak, the romantically obsessed period, the limerence state, is euphoric. You go to sleep thinking about each other. When you wake up, the other person is on your mind. You long to be together. You're sad when you're apart. Man, you don't know what you're going to do. Your friends think that you're just a wet mop. When you hold hands, you receive energy. It's almost like they zap you. And I mean, kissing gives you the tingles and gets you there. Yeah. People, it's all scriptural. In fact, that's all part of human nature. Let me show you something interesting. Most of us don't read this book of Song of Solomon because we don't understand it. It's not just a spiritual book. It's also a physical book. It's both. But it teaches us some physical things. Let me show you what it says in Song of Solomon chapter 1, verse number 2. This is the woman talking. This is the woman who's in the romantically obsessed stage, also known as limerence. Kiss me and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How fragrant your cologne. Your name is like it's spreading fragrance. When someone says your name, I can smell you. Yes. No wonder all the young women love you. Truth of the matter is, there's not another woman on the planet that thinks he's a good catch. But not in your eyes. In your eyes. Man, no wonder all the other women are after him. But he only has eyes for me. Yeah, right. Now look at Song of Solomon chapter 2, verse 5. Strengthen me with raisin cakes. Refresh me with apples. For I am weak with love. People, these verses, if you've never read them, are describing the romantically obsessed phase. They're describing the limerent state. It's human nature. It's just kind of the way you are. Let me tell you how older men look at it. Yeah, they're worthless. They're in love. And you know why older men will put up with it? It's only going to last about 2 to 3 years. They'll get married, they're honeymooners, then it'll be over. And it's true. Yeah. Now, I want you to understand something, though, before we get to that. When a person is in the limerent state, they're expressing love on all cylinders and in all 5 ways. I'm telling you, Lisa thought she had caught the best catch in the world when she was dating me. Man, it was the giving of gifts. It wasn't just words of affirmation. It was acts of service. It was quality time. It was physical. It was all of those things because I was in a state of limerence. But here's the problem. That obsession must wear off or you would be useless. You know, during that period of time, I'm sure I wasn't a good employee. I'm sure my parents thought, what in the world? But I want you to understand something. When it does wear off, you revert back to the one predominant way of expressing love, and at special occasions, the secondary way. But your mate does that too. Dr. Dorothy Tinov, a psychologist, after devoting her life to studying the in-love phase, concluded that the average lifespan of romantic obsession is 2 to 3 years. Eventually what happens is we descend from the clouds, our feet touch the ground, and we're finally back to reality. And the old men go, yep, honeymoon's over. Oh yeah. What's he mean by that? You're out of the limerent state. Now you're useful. You were useless before then. But I want you to understand something. It's at this point, if agape love is not established in your marriage, and you don't express love in the way your mate needs it and wants it, you begin to have marriage problems. Yeah. Why? Because feeling loved is one of the most important factors, if not the most important factor, to being happy in your marriage. Let me say that again, because you might not have caught that. Feeling loved is one of the most important factors, if not the most important factor, to being happy in your marriage. So, let me give you the love language principle. Here it is. Taking notes, write it down. You need to know what your spouse's love language is and express your love in that way in order to make them feel loved. Because if they don't feel loved, you're not going to have a good marriage. You also need to know your love language so you can recognize when you're communicating in your language and not your spouse's language. Now, if you and your spouse don't know what your love languages are, remember, you have a predominant way and a secondary way. If you don't know what they are, then you need to take the test. And we have the test on our app, on our website, and on social media. So you would just have to download the app, Cornerstone Fellowship, Allen Nolan, or go to our website, cornerstonefellowship.tv, .com, .church, .biz, all those things. We bought them all. Just go to Cornerstone Fellowship. All right? And you can take that test. Now, let me say this. First of all, love languages can change over time. Yeah. When you get love expressed in a certain way and you're not getting it in another way, all of a sudden it begins to change. With Lisa and I, I've always been words of affirmation, And I've always been physical touch. Yeah. I want to hold hands with her when she doesn't want to hold hands. I want her to sit next to me when she wants her own chair. Well, she's learned to express love that way. Now, because we spend so much time together, but it's not always quality time, I'm more quality time. I want her undivided attention. Hey, we're empty nesters. I deserve undivided attention. Yeah. Secondly, and I'm going to end with this, you need to learn your children's love language. Nothing's worse than for your children to grow up. And they know you loved them, but they didn't ever really feel loved. And you don't get it because you were just showering them with love. But it was in your love language, not theirs. I'm going to tell you a true story and then I'm ending. My mom's predominant way of expressing love was words of affirmation. Her secondary love language was physical touch. Those are mine. My mom always made me feel loved. My dad's love language, though I don't know if he knew it, was acts of service and giving of gifts. The bad thing for him is he had a problem child and he became consumed, and he enabled that because he was an acts of service person. But here's what's interesting. Acts of service and the giving of gifts did not make me feel loved. I knew my dad loved me, but he never made me feel loved. And he did all of these acts of service for me. And he gave all these wonderful gifts to me. And it wasn't until I was at John Brown University reading this and understanding that I was able to look at my parents and go, no wonder my mom makes me feel. I walk in the room and she says, there's my favorite son. It's okay, my siblings know I'm the favorite. I'm just teasing. My mom said that about every one of her children. So anyways, but I did. I walk in the room and she would say, there's my favorite son. Come over here. Sit on my lap. Mom, I'm too big. Then let me sit on your lap. And then she'd have to tell me why she loved me and how she loved me. And I can't help but think that I look in the mirror now, I just can't believe what I see. There's no hair. I'm fat. That's not what I see in my mind. I'm still skinny with lots of hair and good looking because my mom always said that. But she made me feel loved. I've had 2 daughters. Different love languages. One's giving of gifts, one's quality time. Predominant. If you don't express love in those ways, they know you love them, but they don't feel loved. And here's what's bad. If you have several children and your love language is their love language, it could appear that there's favorites because what happens is your love languages are, you speak the same language and you're just always like this. And the others are like pantomiming. Does that make sense? Now, if you're here this morning, you never received Jesus, I know we didn't talk specifically about Jesus, but I still believe whenever we teach the Word, the Holy Spirit convicts. And if you're here this morning and you don't have Jesus, I guarantee you the Holy Spirit's convicting you. And there's something inside of you, your knower and your spirit, that fellowship part 2, that's saying, I need Jesus. Well, you do need Jesus because without Jesus, you can't go to heaven. So I'm going to make it real simple for you to be able to receive Jesus. The Epistle of John tells us, he that hath the Son, in other words, he that has Jesus has life. He that hath not the Son, and who's the Son? Jesus, who doesn't have Jesus does not have life. It's as simple as that. You want to go to heaven? You need Jesus. So here's what I'm going to do. If you know you need Jesus, I'm going to say a very simple prayer. In this prayer, I'm going to receive Jesus. If you need to receive Jesus, you repeat this prayer after me. The prayer's not magic. All it's doing is voicing what you want inside. You want Jesus to be your Lord and Savior. You want to put your faith in him. You want to go to heaven. So I want everyone here to bow their heads, close their eyes. If you want to receive Jesus, just repeat this prayer after me. You can even say it silently to yourself. Here goes. God, I know I'm a sinner. And I know that my sin has separated me from you. But God, I believe you love me. And because you love me, I believe you sent your son Jesus to die for my sin. I also believe that when he died, Jesus went to hell to pay the penalty for my sin. But once my sin was paid for, I believe, God, you raised Jesus from the dead. Jesus, I believe in you, and I want you to be my Lord and Savior. Thank you for forgiving me of my sin. Thank you for paying the price for my sin. Thank you for being Lord of my life and making it possible for me to go to heaven. I thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, with every head bowed, every eye closed, if you said that prayer for the first time, you need to make it public. I won't embarrass you and ask you to come forward, but if you said that prayer, I want you to raise your hand real high right now. Anyone? See the hand right here. Anyone else? Best decision you'll ever make. Anyone else? I see that hand over there. Anyone else? That's two. All right, let's give them a hand. Josh?